Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Gender Decoded, the podcast where we unpack the hidden patterns behind gender, data, and society. I'm your host, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. This episode is going to challenge what you think you know about relationships, and maybe even yourself. Today, we're diving into a fascinating question that's part tradition, part data story, and part social shift. Are age gaps in marriage disappearing? You've probably heard people talk about couples with big age differences. Maybe you've seen headlines about celebrity marriages where one partner is decades older. Or maybe you've even heard people casually say that men tend to marry younger or that women mature faster. But how true are these claims? And more importantly, what does the actual data tell us about how age differences between spouses are evolving in the real world? In this episode, we're going to explore a new visualization that digs into age differences between men and women in married heterosexual couples in the US. We'll talk about the most common patterns, what's changing, and why. We'll also zoom out to think about how this ties into larger themes like gender roles, education, widowhood, and dating culture. By the end, you'll walk away with a clearer picture of where we stand and maybe rethink some assumptions along the way.
Welcome to Gender Decoded, where numbers align, seeing the stories that data defines. Breaking the barriers, truth untold, insights in gender, the data force.
Let's start with a bit of background. For most of modern history, husbands have been older than their wives. This wasn't just random, it reflected the way society was structured. Men were often expected to become financially stable before getting married, while women were pushed to marry young, often while still seen as being in their prime for fertility. This older man, younger woman pairing was so common that it basically became the default image of marriage. But fast forward to today, and things are starting to look very different. Women now outnumber men in college enrollment. They're marrying later, working more, and playing a much bigger role in shaping household income. At the same time, men are marrying later too, but not necessarily gaining more ground. So naturally, researchers and data scientists have been asking, are couples getting closer in age? And if so, what does that mean for things like relationship quality, longevity, caregiving, or even widowhood? Which brings us to the data we're unpacking today. This chart comes from the 2022 American Community Survey, or ACS, which is conducted annually by the U.S. Census Bureau. It provides a deep look at demographic patterns across the country. In this case, the data was pulled from what's called the Public Use Microdata Sample, or IPUMS, which allows researchers to dive into individual-level responses without compromising privacy. Nathan Yao over at FlowingData visualized this particular breakdown. It shows the distribution of age gaps in male-female married couples. We're not talking about celebrities or extremes, just everyday households across the US. So what does it show? Here's the breakdown. The largest single group, 34% of all married couples, are within 1 year of each other in age. That's right. The most common marriage today is not a big age gap, but a peer relationship, where the husband and wife were born within about a year of each other. Now, 28% of couples feature a husband who is 2 to 4 years older. Another 17% of marriages have a husband who is 5 to 9 years older. And just 7% of marriages have husbands who are older by 10 years or more. Flip the script, and we see something very different. Only 9% of married couples involve wives who are 2 to 4 years older. It drops to 4% for a 5 to 9 year gap. And just 1% of marriages have a wife who is a decade or more older than her husband. So if you're picturing the classic older woman and younger man pairing, it's still rare, but not unheard of. Here's one way to look at it. Around 52% of US marriages still feature an older husband by at least 2 years. About 14% have an older wife. But the biggest share again, that 34%, are nearly the same age. That's a huge shift from historical norms. Now, let's talk about why that's interesting. First, from a gender lens. This shrinking age gap reflects broader changes in how men and women move through life. With women marrying later, finishing school, building careers, and gaining more autonomy, there's no longer the same push to marry up in age or income. In fact, many women now marry across rather than up or even slightly down. Second, think about health and longevity. When husbands are much older than their wives, it raises the odds that women will become widows and that they'll spend years, even decades, alone. By narrowing the age gap, women are reducing those risks. In fact, some projections suggest that the shrinking gap has already shaved about 3 years off expected widowhood duration for women compared to the 1990s. Third, there's a health twist you might not expect. Some European studies found that men married to younger women live longer, but women married to younger men actually experience higher mortality rates. It's unclear why. Is it stress, social disapproval, differences in caregiving? We don't fully know, but it's another reminder that age gaps are not just romantic trivia, they have real-life consequences. Now let's flip to remarriage. Interestingly, wide age gaps become more common in second or third marriages. Older men who remarry are more likely to choose younger partners, while older women still face more stigma for doing the same. That reflects lingering gender double standards. Men are often seen as distinguished with age, while women face pressure to stay youthful. Let's wrap it up. What does all of this mean? In short, the age gap in American marriages is narrowing. The dominant pattern today is one of equals, people marrying others who are very close to them in age. That reflects changing norms, economic shifts, and a culture that's increasingly comfortable with peer-based partnerships. But at the same time, small husband-older gaps persist, and large wife-older gaps remain rare. The cultural and structural forces that shaped marriage for centuries don't disappear overnight. So the next time you hear someone say, "Men always marry younger," you can politely say, "Actually, not really." The most common couple in America today? They're practically the same age. Thanks so much for listening to Gender Decoded. I hope today's episode gave you something new to think about. If you enjoyed it, share it with a friend, leave a review, or reach out with your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. Until next time, keep asking smart questions and stay curious about the way gender shapes our world. See you soon.